Welcome to the College Football Bros. I'm Michael Newman.
I'm Ryan Newman.
And I'm Trey Newman.
All right, we have made it to the Pac-12 in our quarterback rankings week. So Trey is on the hot seat today. He's going to project all the starters for every school in the Pac-12 and rank them from 12 to 1. If you haven't already, be sure you're subscribed because we're going to do the SEC tomorrow, and we will have also the G5 and Independents coming up. We'll put them all in the same group, have the overall quarterback rankings in college football. So a lot coming out in the coming days. But Ryan, who is Trey's worst quarterback in the SEC or in the Pac-12?
It is Gunnar Cruz. I like the name, but Gunnar Cruz from Arizona.
Yeah, he isn't even a shoo-in for the job, and that's going to be kind of a theme for the Pac-12 mostly. He's a Washington State transfer. He was recruited for the air raid offense, and he's going to be battling with Will Plummer and then South Florida transfer Jordan McLeod. But Cruz does seem like the front runner going into the fall. He had a solid spring game, and by all accounts, he was kind of the most accurate of the group. But Jedd Fisch has his hands full in trying to get Arizona out of the cellar. And I just had to stick Cruz down here because I don't see them kind of moving the ball enough to have him be more successful and higher on this list.
Yeah, I think losing Grant Gunnell to transfer is going to hurt Arizona potentially. Number 11, you have from Colorado, Brendon Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado in general last year overachieved, and I just find it very difficult for them to duplicate or exceed the success that they had in that abbreviated season. And last year's starter, Sam Neuer, he just entered the transfer portal a couple of weeks ago, so Dorrell is in need of someone to step up. It seems like it'll be Lewis, who's a freshman. He had a very good performance against Texas, albeit in some cleanup duty in the Alamo Bowl, but he's a dual threat. Solid spring, was an early enrollee last year, so he's had a full year in the system. But he's going to be competing with Tennessee transfer JT Shrout. Big arm, more of a pocket passer, though. But just reading through some of the coach quotes, it seems like they want it to be Lewis because of his dual threat ability. But again, I'm not expecting big things from Colorado.
Yeah, I think I agree on that one. All right, move on to number 10 from Stanford. We got Tanner McKee. Pretty low for a Stanford quarterback.
I know, but every year it just seems like they slip and slip with these quarterbacks, and they're kind of almost hitting the reset button on the quarterback position this year. It looks to be between McKee and then Jack West, and Jack West just never quite lived up to his hype. And it just seems like McKee has the upper hand at this point. Had a very good spring game, but we've talked about with the quarterback play at Stanford. I'm not super confident in. It's been kind of up and down recently. So I'm not seeing McKee, if he is the starter, to make this massive jump to the top half of the conference. I mean, hopefully with David Shaw they can do that, but I'm not banking on it.
Yeah, and McKee was a big recruit once upon a time and went on his mission and came back, I think is the case with him, but see what happens there. Number 9, you've got Tristan Gebbia at Oregon State.
Yeah, I placed Gebbia here, but I could see him moving up a little bit if the chips fall right for the Beavers. He started the first 4 games last year before going down with a hamstring injury, but just watching their games, which I happened to watch a decent amount of them, he seemed better than his stats showed. He really ended up, I guess when you look at the stats, pretty modest numbers, only 6.5 yards per attempt and 3 touchdowns and 3 picks. But just, I don't know, the poise, the moxie, the way he kind of ran the offense, it seemed like Jonathan Smith really liked him. So I think maybe with the full off season, another year in the system, that he could get into this kind of range, of the 9 range.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I did kind of like what I saw from him last year. All right, moving on to number 8. This guy is a little bit of a wild card going into this year. From Washington State, Jayden DeLora.
This is a very tricky one. DeLora, he flashed some brilliance as a freshman, but then he was suspended from the team because of a DUI. Rolovich recently reinstated him, but he's going to be now in a quarterback battle with Jarrett Garantano, who transferred in from Tennessee. So, Garantano himself was up and down with the Vols, but he sets, a decent floor for the quarterback room. But, when you look at Delora, he actually did have his best game of the year was against a pretty good Oregon Duck defense. And he just seems like that's the guy that Coug fans would want. And I think Rolovich wants Delora. Maybe the Garantano competition will get the best of him in the offseason because he does have more upside. But like you said, Ryan, he's a wild card. Like he could play anywhere from like 5th to 12th.
Even better, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to number 7, Chase Garbers at Cal. What are your thoughts on him?
He's got a lot of experience. He's been productive both through the air and the ground. He has battled some injuries. That's been a bugaboo for him. And, after 2019, I probably would have had him higher in this list, but his production tapered a little bit last year as they kind of mystifying. They transitioned to a more old school offense going under center. The long run, it might work, and I hope it does. So it was kind of rocky in the beginning. The last couple of games, he looked better. 4 scores, no picks. But just overall in 2020, the metrics, the yards per attempt and passer rating, they went down in 2020. But if he can kind of build off those last couple games and some of that 2019, play, he's good. But I hope he doesn't get held back by that system.
Okay. Moving on here to number 6 from UW, Dylan Morris.
Yeah, the Huskies' offense has been tough to judge. It's left a lot to be desired recently. And Morris himself, I'll say it again, he's in a battle. Colorado State transfer Patrick O'Brien and highly touted Sam Heward is in the quarterback room. But Morris, I'm just kind of leaning with him because he showed some promise. He has some experience. He led them to the North Division title, even though they didn't get to play. And it wasn't always pretty visually or in the stat sheet, but I'm just kind of anticipating a second-year jump if he truly is the guy.
Yeah, not bad for a freshman season. 5th, we've got Anthony Brown at Oregon, replacing Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, first, when I just kind of think about Anthony Brown, I'm not super high on him, but the more I think, he got some pretty good experience last year in Joe Moorhead's system, where he'd shuffle with Tyler Shuck. He, of course, has a lot of Boston College experience under his belt. And the other thing about him is he can move the ball with his legs. At Boston College, he didn't put up these insane numbers, but he steadily improved kind of each year. And now being a 5th-year guy, I don't think he's going to turn into Vince Young and become maybe, incredible. But second year in Moorhead's system with the talent around him that he can use, I think he could thrive from that, and then they'll be in the mix for a Pac-12 title.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. He definitely has some advantages. All right, moving on to number 4 from Utah. They're probably going to go with the Baylor transfer, Charlie Brewer.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, personally, for me, this ranking at number 4 is more of just a play on how good he can be because of the team he's got in Utah. Charlie Brewer of Baylor last year, he might not be kind of 4th on this list, but it wasn't entirely his fault considering they had lost so much from your magical 2019 run, Ryan, with Matt Rule. But he's been pretty consistent. Solid passer ratings, pretty efficient, 65 touchdowns to 28 picks. He has 22 rushing touchdowns, so he's good on the ground. And actually, if you read into anything into these spring games, he went 15 for 15. He does have to battle Cameron Rising of Texas, the transfer. But Brewer, the more I think about it, he seems like a good fit for Whittingham and the Utes.
Okay. Going to number 3, it is Dorian Thompson-Robinson, of course, one-time, big-time recruit from UCLA. Maybe finally showed some promise last year.
I think so. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how we think this will be Chip Kelly's best UCLA team, or at least it should be. And DTR, he is super athletic, really seemed to take a big step last season, making second team all Pac-12. In his game against rival SC, he threw for 363, had 4 touchdowns, kind of looked like one of the best players on the field. He led the Bruins offense to much higher scoring last year. They were a lot more productive, and he was efficient. And not to mention, he averaged over 5.5 yards per carry. He's electric. He's fun to watch, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up even 1 or 2 on this list.
Yeah, he's each of his 3 years, he's steadily gotten better, so no problem with him. All right, moving on to number 2 from ASU. They're in a little bit of trouble now, but Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just prefaced it. That's the one thing I'm a little worried about is just kind of the scandal around Arizona State. But at the moment, I'm keeping the blinders on because he is one of the top Pac-12 quarterbacks, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. They only played 4 games last year, but he had 9 touchdowns, dual threat. Their offense looked otherworldly in their last 2 games. I know they were playing lowly Arizona and then Oregon State, but he's so efficient. He has a 22-3 touchdown to interception ratio in his career. There's a lot to like about this ASU team as well in this upcoming year if the dust kind of settles from the controversy or the scandal that's going on. But of course, that's a big if.
Okay, we are to number 1 from my USC Trojans, Kedon Slovis.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to kind of have him right at 1, maybe I guess 2, but he's projected as a top pick in next year's draft. I know that's not what we're building this list off of, but he can make a lot of throws that not a lot of guys can make. He proved how clutch he could be last year. We saw it in the shortened season. He had late fourth quarter drives to win in 3 different games, including against rival UCLA, which I mentioned earlier. He was 6th in the country last year, averaging 320 yards per game. He's completed 70% of his passes in his first 2 years. I mean, I could go on, but I think he clearly deserves number 1 based on what he's done.
Yeah, it is. It is funny how last year was a down year for him, certainly compared to his freshman year. But still, you look at his stats, like they weren't bad, and he was, I think, dealing with kind of an elbow injury going into the year, but fourth quarter, man, he got it done, which
and they
somehow, some way.
They very easily could
Counts
have
for
lost
something.
3 of those games. Like, could have had a losing season.
Yeah.
Like, they got real lucky a couple of them.
Okay, so Ryan, let's pick apart Trey's list here. What are your kind of overall thoughts, disagreements?
Chase Garbers, I don't think he should be that low. I think he should be a little higher. I probably would have had him at least 2 spots higher, ahead of Dylan Morris and Anthony Brown. Garbers, I know he didn't have the greatest maybe statistical year last year, but he has not had much support on that team at all. I mean, their weapons have been, his whole career there's been really bad. So for what he's done, what he's accomplished there, I think he probably should move up a couple more.
Yeah, I think 3 through 7, there's a lot of different orders there that I wouldn't have a huge problem with.
I'm feeling pretty confident.
I hear you about Chase
though. He's 3rd, and
you're pretty confident.
he's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I'll have a good year. You're right. But I think Garbers could have a good year too. Like a couple years ago, we mentioned he did it. He would probably belong 4th on this list if he played like that. And especially when you consider the fact that he didn't have much around him even then. Yep. Last year, I think there's a lot of excuses. Kind of the COVID hit Cal hard.
Yeah, it did.
Just kind of an awkward season. And of course, you mentioned transitioning to a new offense. That was not the right offseason to be doing that. So I'm fine with him at 7, but I simultaneously could see him finishing higher. I don't really have many problems with your list. Like Anthony Brown, I'm fine with where you have him, though I acknowledge he's got the upside to be 1 or 2.
Yeah,
on
he
this
does.
List, under Joe
You
Moorhead.
really think so? Wow. I
think so, yeah. I mean, because I know we're supposed to be ranking these guys in a vacuum and not, giving them credit for their surrounding pieces, but it's hard to separate that. And I just think, like I said, I trust Moorhead to develop him. You mentioned he kept getting better and better at Boston College. Yeah. His last year at Boston College, he got hurt, but he was about to have a really good year
6
there.
games. It was good numbers.
Yeah, and now with this Oregon offense, great receivers there. I think he could be poised for a really big year. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily rank him much different than you. Maybe I'd have him a spot higher or something. Yeah. But I just see the potential there.
I think. What I was going to say, it's kind of funny. You guys really alluded to it because I was looking at my list and I thought if there was a guy that I had to go higher with, I would have taken Chase Garbers because I do think he could go. I think 7's as low as he could go. He just kind of fell there, but I do think he could be. If I had to pick a guy that would go higher, it'd be him. And then conversely, if someone had to go lower, I think I would lean to Charlie Brewer. But
I can see that.
But yeah, you guys touched on Chase Garbers. I do think that would be. He was about as low as I could have possibly put him.
Yeah,
agreed.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching the Pac-12 quarterback episode. Sound off in the comments with your thoughts on Trey's list. Tomorrow, I have the very, very scary task of ranking the SEC starting quarterbacks all by myself. No one to blame but me in the comments. So we got a bunch of Pac-12 fans watching. Maybe go be nice to me in the comments in tomorrow's episode. Be like, hey, good list, Michael. Great job. You killed it. Something like that. Go argue with people on my behalf. I don't know, but we'll talk to you tomorrow.
You've been watching the College Football Bros. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube and in your podcast app for college football content all year round. For bonus episodes and access to our Discord chat, join our Patreon at patreon.com/collegefootballbros. Thanks for watching.